And good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. Happy Saturday, everybody. We've got you for roughly the next 2 hours. We'll be here until noon. What a week it has been. A lot of sports news to cover. We'll do our best to get to all of it. Dave Cook, one of the craziest weeks in sports, and a crazy week maybe on the calendar because we saw a lot of each other a week ago down at the state tournament, what have you. This is the first time since the end of the last show that I've seen you this week.
Right. Crickets for a while. I think we need to take a breath, right?
Absolutely.
And now we're going to get fired back up for spring, Brian, because baseball starts, 10 days?
Well, I'll tell you what, baseball does start. The opener for the Twins is 12 days away. It's a nice countdown to my birthday this year as well because opening day happens to be the same day. Trust me, I'm a lot more excited about opening day for the Twins than I am about turning 45.
It is nice for the Twins, though, to time it so that you can come
celebrate. It's not the first time they've done that, so I appreciate that. But if you want to know that the NFL is king, all you have to do is look at this week because baseball's coming right up. And NHL, NBA, you've got, a dozen to 20 games left for respective teams. Playoff stretch, per se.
Yep.
Everybody's talking about the football teams making this move, that move. Any team, any move, it's being diagnosed to the nth degree.
It's how the NFL stays king. Like, they're relevant every week of the year. Their timing for things is perfect. Nothing ever, they don't lose attention because everything about the time our attention span is gone, there's another big event.
Absolutely. We talk about March Madness chronically, and the actual March Madness, the selection show will be tomorrow, part of St. Patrick's Day with the fun there as well. But you look at, March Madness and it's high school tournaments, it's college tournaments, it's all that good stuff. And professional sports, most notably the NFL, just continues to take over. This is crazy. And I know it's because the Vikings are in a completely different scenario where they need to address arguably the most important position in sports. But it's leading every conversation. I mean, last night I was at a terrific dinner at Ridgeview Country Club that I'll talk to Dave Hoops more about in about a half an hour. But even as the Bulldog hockey game was on the TV on one end and college basketball was on the TV on another end, leading the conversations with most people that I talk to is, what do you think the Vikings are going to do now?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key question. And I have some coworkers that cheer for other teams. It's the same thing. So I have a coworker who's a Pittsburgh person, born and raised, right? And so, the first thing out of her mouth was, really? Russ? What are we going to do with Russ? It wasn't good morning. It wasn't happy Tuesday. It wasn't, I'm going to be really busy.
At least it wasn't. Really? Sam Darnold?
Yeah. No. Well, that's different. They don't.
I know.
I mean, Pittsburgh's not selling Russ as a bridge.
If you're wholeheartedly reacting to Sam Darnold, just temper yourself for a moment. Go ahead.
But Pittsburgh's not selling Russ as a bridge. They're like, we got
clearly
our guy.
After yesterday, they're not either.
Yeah.
Who was supposed to be their future is now in Philadelphia, other side of the state.
And I don't. Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, Pickett's going to go off, and it's going to be we didn't need that guy.
Right.
At least here, that was how it would work.
I was going to say, it's nice to hear Dan Barrero's quote be a focal point somewhere else.
Yeah, no, but that's a weird pickup, Brian. I still believe that if you got a quarterback, right, and he's your star, your backup needs to at least have something in common with him.
Right.
And Pickett, besides having an arm, dodoesn't really have anything.
Besides the fact that by position they play the same one, that's about all the commonalities they have.
Yeah, I mean, Hurts offers so many more skills.
Well, and I'll take the blame for that mistake because I told you before the Pickett move yesterday, I had heard that maybe Justin Fields was going to be a backup in a Philadelphia-type offense or in a Lamar Jackson-led Ravens-type offense because you would see the mobility similarities there at least.
And Fields, I think, has a better arm than Hurts. So, giving him time to, this is the last year of his rookie contract. So whoever picks him up has got 1 year to look at him. And so if you give out too much draft capital and he stinks, well, you're going to get rid of him anyway. If he's good, you're going to end up paying him $30 million next year. So I think there is some trepidation by most offenses knowing that they have to make a call in 1 year on whether or not to mortgage a franchise or cut a third-round pick. You know what I mean?
So a plethora of moves by a plethora of teams in the NFL. And I'll tell you what, I told you on free agency Monday, even though the league year starts Wednesday and you can throw in legal tampering and all that good stuff, I told you, I said, Dave, you should love this because this is my version of the NFL draft. I watch more NFL Network this week probably than most of the rest of the year, but you should be considering yourself even more lucky because as much as I give you grief about obsessing over the draft, and I've told you my problem with it will never change, it's going to be that for every pick, there's Peyton Manning or there's Ryan Leaf immediately.
Yep.
Whether or not they've played it down or not. There's Deion Sanders and Chris Cook, and it's It's paralysis by analysis every single time. But because the Vikings are in such a different spot, again, addressing hopefully the most important position in sports, I'm into the draft now. You've got a friend in me when it comes to what the draft may be like. So hopefully a bit of luck for you.
Yeah, I hopefully there's no luck if you've already jumped in, right? But I don't. I mean, yes, I want them to go get May, right? I'm afraid of them getting Daniels because, again, what did I learn today? The Vikings were the number one team, passes from 0 to 10 right down the center of the field.
Right.
And they were second in the league, 20 to 30 yards right down the center of the field.
But what did I say to you? If it's 0 to 10 in the middle of the field, when Dobbs and Mullins were throwing, how many of those were supposed to be 20 yards to the left or right? And they ended up 0 to 10 in the middle of the field.
And that could be, but they were completing them. Because that was, and
I was making a joke to make a joke. Does that sound familiar at all?
Yes, that does sound familiar.
Yes.
But I'm not sure the LSU kid has that skill. He's got he can throw to the edges. But May and McCarthy, I think I don't think we know enough about McCarthy to say that, but May can make those throws. Caleb Williams can make those throws, but you're not going to get him away. There was a rumor today that Washington was going to trade number 2 and like a plethora of draft picks to the Bears
to move up one spot
because Williams is a DC guy.
Wow.
Right? I just like Caleb Williams is good, right? But I'm not sure he's light years better than May.
Right.
Or Jaden Daniels for that matter.
So if you haven't figured it out already, there'll be a little more draft talk than usual on this show in the coming weeks because Dave, for once, has suckered me right in. So, again, it's Dave's lucky day, but he can thank Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, even Rob Brzezinski, Vikings brass du jour, because they've got some decisions to make.
Finally.
But let's be honest. They hope to get lucky and hit on the right picks, if you will, or right projections as to what NFL career is going to go what direction.
Yep.
Because, of course, there's going to be a fear of, hey, we're drafting a quarterback again. Christian Ponder is what people are going to think for, the negatives. Whomever we pick are going to go, well, great. We got the next Christian Ponder.
Yeah, well, and you and I have talked about this. I think Christian Ponder was a fine NFL quarterback. He's just not the 11 pick. Like, you can't draft that, like with McCarthy. You can't draft McCarthy and throw him into the NFL as a starter in the third week because he's going to struggle. And then all of a sudden he's a bust. But if you've given him some time to get used to the speed, he might have been fine. Like, if we got what we got out of Ponder and he was a second-round pick,
or you'd have been ecstatic.
Absolutely. The problem is they picked him so early, and so that when I talk to people, I call it "don't ponder this quarterback."
Right.
That's what they'll do.
Well,
if they draft Nix or Penix at 11, they're doing the same thing.
Well, and usually when we say victim of expectations, we talk about a team is this good, so we're hesitant to praise them because we expect it.
Right.
You can be a victim of expectations the other way. Christian Ponder's career became a bit of a joke. But the start of the joke was where he was picked, just like you were saying.
Yeah, that's almost all of it. If you'd have got what you got and he was a second-round pick, huge success. If you'd have got what you got and he was drafted in Teddy Bridgewater's spot, huge success. But you can't draft him. What did they draft him, 11? Like this, or 10th or something like that?
I think it's close to that. I know it's top 15 for sure. I want to say 12, but our Florida State fans like Topher Davis and Daniel Hershey are probably Googling right now if they don't know already.
Right. It's on the back of their hand where they write all the other Florida State stuff. But, yeah, I mean, that's the biggest issue. That's my concern about JJ. Like, I think all the stuff they talk about him running a pro offense, and that's true.
Now you say JJ McCarthy because in Vikings country, when you say JJ, you have to specify.
Yes. That's my issue with McCarthy, is that can he run a pro offense? 100%, right? That's what he did in Michigan. But he threw 22 touchdown passes last year. We just don't know. And if he's Ponder, who was smart and did all that stuff, but really needed time to get used to the speed, if he comes to the NFL and is not used to the speed, he's just going to be another guy.
See, and this is where we teeter to me going, okay, I'm going to check out now because we're doing way too much, prognosis that we know nothing about and paralysis by analysis, because there still needs to be a fair amount of luck involved as well. One spot where we're very lucky is, of course, having terrific sponsors. We're going to give them some love right away.
Absolutely. And let's start with Ryan Arola from Arola Architecture Studio. Hoops Brewing, OAR Holding, Krause Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Advantage Element Screen Printing, The Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, in Proctor, in Two Harbors, Blackwater, right downtown, and Tavern on the Hill. Mall Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, and Comfort Systems of Duluth. Do you have the information to talk about Blackwood's Easter?
I will do that at a much more extended version when we get a little bit further in the show. I want to stay on schedule today. That's been a bugaboo for me for many, many weeks.
Right, but just know that Blackwood's has an Easter special that we're going to get to in just a little bit.
They do, and it's about $165, I believe, and it serves 6. And this is the final week we're going to be plugging that because you got to get orders in by Friday.
Right.
Believe it or not, Friday is already the 22nd of March. I know. Again, the March Madness hasn't started. Selection Sunday is tomorrow. All the hockey snobs say that the real Selection Sunday is the week after, but you're a ways from being the true March Madness selection, if you will. But it's weird to have the madness not yet started, and next Friday is the 22nd.
Yeah, it is. This year is flying by, though, Brian.
And
it's
I got
March
one
22nd.
right. Ponder was 12th overall.
Very good. And was that a Florida State fan?
Of course. Guess which one? It rhymes with Schmoper Schmavis.
How do you get Hersey to rhyme with that? That's what I don't understand.
I don't. Listen close to the rhyming again.
All right. So, but we were talking about luck this morning.
Yes, we were, and not Andrew. But we were talking about luck, not just because I like all kinds of Britney Spears songs like The Lucky One, but luck is going to be a topic today because it is St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. And the luck of the Irish has certainly been, a phrase that we've heard before. And the Vikings, quite frankly, got lucky that one of their former Irish players, Harrison Smith, is the guy that will continue to restructure to stay here.
Absolutely, but tell people the how you got to this topic, because the how you got to this topic is as good as the topic.
Well, part of it was the St. Patrick's Day piece. Maybe I'm not remembering what I told you because I feel like I don't have as much of a grandiose announcement as you're hoping I do.
Because we focus on...
Yeah, I was going to get there.
Yes.
I thought, okay, so St. Patrick's Day is one of my favorite holidays. Judge me accordingly. I might be like 2% Irish at the most, but you put green beer in front of me, don't threaten me with that good time. So I like tomorrow. But I said to you in a call earlier this week, I said, we spend so much time lamenting the negativity that is Minnesota pro sports, and rightfully so, because look back at history, it's probably 90-10, bad things, good things. Put whatever ratio on it you want, just not the Randy ratio, because that was part of the problem too. But I said, what if we took some time to actually be positive and talk about, we were very lucky to have this, or we're very lucky to currently have this, or, for all the bad luck, all the missed kicks, all the, push-offs, what have you, we got a little lucky here. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be positive today and sport by sport, talk about historically and currently where we felt we got lucky. Things went our way. Yeah,
and it's funny how many of those, I mean, if you just scrape away all the negativity, how many of those things are true? Like, I mean, and I just want to start with the Lynx because I think their luck was the biggest. And that was falling into the number one pick when Michael Jordan of the WNBA was
when
there.
Maya Moore was available.
When Maya Moore was available.
And all second with being able to deal for Lindsay Whalen when it was so obvious she needed to come home at some point as well.
Yeah, and so I think the Lynx, besides being our best franchise as far as wins and losses, their luck has been unbelievable.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you this. First of all, they're lucky to have a tremendous coach like they do.
Very true.
And I think quite simply, you already covered the current luck of the Lynx, if you will. And it might be living in the past like Green Bay Packer fans, but I think we're just lucky to have this franchise because we talk so much about, well, this team hasn't won anything. This team hasn't won anything. This team hasn't won anything. This one's won twice, but not since 1991. You look at the Lynx, and whether or not you're a big WNBA fan or not, it does prove that championships can come to Minnesota, before the first Bush administration, if you will.
And Sylvia Fowles, we got to remember her too, because she was
and Simone Augustus.
I
mean, they had probably the best team you'll ever see in WNBA history, name for name.
Yeah, Fowles, remember, she requested to come to Minnesota. Who requests to come to Minnesota?
Right.
Besides maybe Blake Cashman.
Or in what sport do people request to come to Minnesota? And women's basketball and probably the new PWHL are the places where people do.
Well, and after talking to CJ last week and getting an idea on how much talent there is in our state, maybe we need to start hoping for that more because it really does draw attention when one of your own is playing on your pro team.
It really does. So probably where the Lynx get bad luck, although we're not supposed to go this direction, is because they are such a winner. We tend to, on this show, talk about them a little less. Now, Cheryl Reeves been on a handful of times. Cheryl Reeves is one of the best coaches ever to coach any sport. In my opinion. Yeah. But they've fallen a little bit on the luck side of things because we disregard because things are going so smoothly.
Well, and the fact that you get grace. Like if you've won a lot, you get grace to have some down years. I still do it
with the Twins. Yeah. It's been how many years now? This will be 32, 33 if they don't win it this year since they last, won a title. But when you're the only men's sport to win and the others haven't, I go, well, it's the Twins. We have trophies.
Well, think of the Wild, and besides the state of Minnesota thing, they haven't had a losing record in forever. They do not have a coach with a losing record,
Right.
And so they get some grace for always being good, even though they're not always contenders.
Well, on the Wild, do you want to go there next? Because that was part of where we put a caveat on this particular topic, because we wanted to say it's got to be a situation where we, the fans, feel lucky. Because I could spin it and I could turn this into a negative topic, and I've done it 300 times on this show. I could say, you want to know where the Wild are lucky? They're lucky that this is the state of hockey and people worship them no matter how mediocre they are. I've made that point several times. That's not what we're going for here. Where are we truly lucky historically? Where are we truly lucky now that this topic, person, play, what have you, is part of our franchise?
Well, I think currently we're lucky that the front office and Kaprizov had enough patience that when his KHL thing was done, that indeed they had capital in the relationship that he came over, because it always felt like he was close enough to staying in Russia that we might never see him, and because however they got it done, we're very fortunate. We're lucky, right?
I agree. Now, I'm going to say something that you should love, because I think they're extremely lucky to have a player like Brock Faber. And I'm going to go multi-directions with that, because you look at the contracts of Parise and Suter, and we're almost done with the constraints that come with those. Yep. And you look at, they've struggled this year. They may make a last-second run at the last playoff spot. I know you don't want them to. We could go down that road too. This is not a good team, but this is not a bad team. What I'm excited about is you talk about watching kids play. If you want to look at I think it's the Hart Trophy that is or is it the Calder? Which one goes to the rookie?
Yeah, no, it's I think it is the Calder.
Okay, so you look at the finalists for the rookie base type trophies, and you look at Connor Bedard, and it should probably be his to lose kind of thing. But you look at finalists, and you got to figure Rossi and Faber, or Rossi, if it's whatever pronunciation du jour he's got. Yeah, so you are trying to build again. And you've got two of arguably the top 5 youngest players in the game. You're lucky.
Yeah, you are. And just think how lucky we'd think if there was some flexibility in the rest of the contracts if you needed to move somebody. Anyway, there's your negative. Historically,
that's the reality piece. Yeah, knock that off.
Historically, I think they've been lucky with their goaltending. I know right now it's a little squirrely, but when they first started, you remember they would pick up random goalie and they would have a half a year where they were unreal. Rolly the goalie and those groups, where they would carry them into the playoffs. They've been fortunate.
Well, I think you're lucky now because the Gus bus has fallen off track, and you've got Flower coming back to Flower type ability.
Well, and think how rough they were before they got Dubnyk. Like they have goalie magic touch, at least for a while.
Right. All right, where to next? Because we talk about the Twins getting grace because they have the 2 titles.
I want to go with the Wolves because I think you and I agree with their luck. So a couple years ago, there was a first-round draft, and there were 3 guys who were considered 1, 2, and 3, right? It was the Wiseman kid, who was a 7'2" center who could run like the wind and finish. You had Ball, who was 6'7" point guard and who could do everything, but really, like, he was considered Ricky Rubio, but 5 inches taller, right? And then, or 3 inches taller. And then there was Ant, who was a physical specimen, but never won anything, right? They were worried that he was a stat filler, right? A box score filler. And the difference between Ball and Ant at that time was nothing. Like, it was 1 and 1A. And then Wiseman was, the Wolves would likely pick that guy, right?
Right.
And they picked Ant, and everybody just kind of went, I hope this isn't J.R. Ryder.
Well,
right?
I feel
and he turned into the guy, and it's timing, right? Because Cat was there, and he's nurturing, and the coach.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I even want to go back to the Cat draft, because I agree with you. I think a couple of drafts, the one you mentioned and the Towns one, even for me, I know he's had some difficulties. I know he's hurt again. I know we've talked about needing a life coach is one of the best quotes on this show ever to be uttered. But at the same time, you look at the Edwards draft, you look at the Towns draft, and it's almost enough to, look past the Shaq, Gazole, Leitner, we're the third prong there. That didn't work out so well. J.R. Ryder, like you mentioned, didn't work out so well. Donnell Marshall, I guess it worked out because he got his Gugliotta down the road. But a lot of high picks that didn't do right. You could even argue Marbury for Ray Allen. I still think could have hung on to Ray Allen and been better. But when Towns got picked, now granted, there was a player between these two, But I remember when the Wolves got the one, I thought Jahlil Okafor was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
Because we had just gotten a heavy dosage of him winning the title.
And who was the center
we liked him even more because he beat Wisconsin to win said title.
Who was the center we got for Garnett?
I'm not sure.
We got was it no the
This makes for great radio.
No, I know. Well, somebody will look it up. He was the back to the basket.
Oh, Al Jefferson.
Al Jefferson.
I didn't view him as a center. I thought he was another power forward.
But we got that guy who was back to the basket, smooth around the basket, and that was Okafor. So we actually had in our minds somebody that you could compare him to,
right?
That played for the Wolves. And you're right. Taking Cat was outside because again, Kentucky stat filler,
right?
Soft. That was one of the things that they brought up,
and some of those things have come up even during his Wolves career. But if you look back, I mean, the player in between him, I believe, was D'Lo. Ironically, I think Okafor went third, and D'Lo was 2 right in the middle.
And Willie Cauley-Stein was the guy that PA used to bring up.
Well, and how about even you can think about a year that the Wolves had 2 first-round picks like the Vikings do now. You got Wally with one of them, and you got Will Avery with another. There's a negative where Will Avery turned out to be nothing. So when you talked about the Edwards draft, do you put that as historical luck or do you put that in present luck? Because I look at it and I go, we're lucky to get to watch Anthony Edwards every time you watch a Wolves game. It's very interesting, though, because I think you have to go with historically. We probably didn't think it at the time. You and I maybe did because we're big basketball fans. They're lucky that Glenn Taylor swooped in. I know in general we're excited for the ownership change, but there was a time where the Minnesota Timberwolves should have been the New Orleans Timberwolves or the New Orleans whatever they were going to call it. This team was gone.
Yeah, and we were run like a 2-bit operation, right? I mean, people want to make fun of Glenn, but Glenn runs this thing like the Titanic versus, a dinghy like it was run before. But I think their luck was their first coach. And I know I'm a Mussy guy.
It's because it's the 70,000th time you brought him up on this show.
My point is that they brought in a guy who was going to bring interest right away. Yeah, I think if this team would have been horrible, I think they would have lost interest pretty fast.
I think you're right. I think you're right in terms of interest, but I would play devil's advocate with this, and I think being good early hurt them because they weren't able to build the way the Orlando Magic were when they came in because, while Orlando had Shaq and Penny, we had Felton Spencer and J.R. Ryder. I mean, life is different.
And Tony Campbell.
And Luke Longley.
Yes, that whole crew.
So there's... Yeah, Pooh Richardson too, although that was the first one.
But Longley and Spencer back to back. That's part of the problem.
Right.
So I think that was the initial luck that they had, and then they didn't go from there.
I think they're lucky that Flip Saunders had an affinity to the state of Minnesota. If you want to talk coaches that really kind of resurrected or in some ways rescued this franchise altogether.
That's very true.
Flip's love for the sport, Flip's love for the metro area, Flip's love for Minnesota, very lucky.
Who was Flip's coach in college?
For the Gophers, was that Mussy again, too? So. He just wanted one more excuse to bring him up. This show is not sponsored by the late, great Bill Musselman, but it could be.
So let's flip teams then.
Well, we've only got one left, besides the Vikes, which we're going to close with.
Yeah, I forgot about
So we're going to the Twins.
Yep. We'll go with the Twins, Brian. How about that?
All right, so we've got the Vikings left to close. We're going to close with them on purpose because it's going to segue into a lot of the content today. It's very weird to be football heavy on the 16th of March.
Yeah.
But for the Twins, I kind of went outside the box. And I said, you know what? They do get that grace for the 2 titles that they have. And I'm as guilty as anybody. But we shouldn't be any less grateful for the 2 titles that they have. But we got a little lucky in the sense that the 2 titles that they won came on years where the American League was home 4 times in the World Series.
Yeah.
Because they don't do that anymore, deciding home versus away. It goes by record, what have you. It didn't back then. It was simply alternating. Now, you can't predict that they for sure would have lost, but you can certainly look at their World Series record home and away and go, Game 7s might have gone a different direction, not unlike it did in 1965.
So I'm going to have kind of the same time frame, but a little different take on this. Historically, their luck was the Metrodome.
Because we talked about that last week on the way home.
The Metrodome was a dump, right?
But it was our dump, and we knew the little bit of nuances to it.
Which is what made it special. They built a team around those nuances, right? They built a team on guys who'd hit the ball on the ground and let it run forever because it was like a mini golf, floor the whole way. They got outfielders who could take the wall because the wall gave, right? And so that Metrodome gave them a unique style of baseball, which at the Metrodome was tough to play. So the combo of 4 games at home and playing in a stadium that nobody else played in
Right.
Made a big deal.
How about this for another outside the box thought? Because I almost thought about, the Twins are lucky that a Rule 5 guy turned out to be an absolute stud, because if memory serves me correctly, and it usually does, although not as well as it used to, my recollection tells me that Johan Santana was a Rule 5 guy.
Yep.
And you don't usually anticipate Rule 5 guys becoming arguably your best pitcher of a decade or two.
You can make the argument best pitcher. Like if you put him on
You'd
number
lose that
one,
argument, but you could.
That would be an interesting conversation to have.
You have multiple Hall of Famers that have pitched for this team. Now, I could argue that Johan should be one. He's gotten kind of a raw deal, but I'm not sure you can put him ahead of those guys.
Those guys didn't pitcher their whole career.
Jim Cott, Bert Blyleven it's just different to me. I get they played for other teams, but so did Johan. We're not going to pretend he didn't.
Cott's more of a twin.
Right.
Blyleven, he's a mercenary. But anyways, historically, I think you're right. I think historically, because not only was he a Rule 5, but they put him in the pen.
Right.
Right. He was just going to be a long man, and then they, Dick Such, God bless him, turned him into a starter with that changeup, and turned him into a potential Hall of Famer when he left here to go to the Mets. Right. So no, I kind of agree with you on that.
Was that the Dick Such era? That seems so far apart. I would have thought it would have been a Rick Anderson or somebody else like that.
It might have been. Whoever gave him the change.
So I was going to say, I'm thinking of Dick Such in the early Tom Kelly years, and I'm not sure that would be the same. But Johan, obviously, to come from Rule 5 and become what he became is a story in its own right. What are we presently lucky to have with the Twins? Because I look at it this way, and everybody's going, here goes Brian to be a pull-at pocket protector, and I'm not, because they are cheap, but I've just kind of learned to deal with it. I'm not going to let it ruin the baseball season for me. But I'll tell you one thing that they seem to have done, and I know it's not as exciting as the NFL or the NBA draft, but they've drafted well. The young kids on this team that are now going to be part of this year's team is pretty darn exciting. The Vikings are trying to find their way to a young core. The Twins, that's exactly what they have.
Yeah, that's very true. My lucky right now is going to be different. It's going to make more eyes roll than yours. I think that they're very lucky that the Giants and the Mets decided not to go after Correa. I think you're right. I think Carlos Correa is their leader, and they got him for a hefty contract, but a fair contract.
Yeah, and there's plenty of naysayers that'll say he hasn't lived up to it at all, and I get the point, but I guess I look at intangibles with him more than most people do.
Yep. I just think that fortune gave them a number 1 shortstop. Whether he played that way last year or not, we got him for 6. Let's see what happens.
Well, and the difference between like a Correa or a Buxton for me, because you can look at it and say when they're healthy and when they're, at their best, you probably have 2 of the top 40, 50 players in all of baseball. The difference is with Buxton, you keep talking about potential. I heard a great quote earlier this week, that potential is what people say when what's in front of them isn't good enough yet. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
But with Correa, you may not have seen it in a Twins uniform, but you've seen it before. And you just hope he's going to get there.
And you saw it in the playoffs.
You did.
And remember when we got him the first time. He's going to lead us to the playoffs. But with Buxton, you're right, because the outcome with Buxton is best player in baseball or not playing baseball. That's so broad, you just don't know what you're going to get.
Well, and I feel like so much of that is imaginary. Are there skills to be the
100%.
best? Absolutely. Have we seen anything close to it? No.
That's the potential part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you're right about the Twins.
So we're closing with the Vikings on purpose, and we'll do it in a hurry because we'll talk to a lot of guests about that today.
Yeah.
The Vikings and Lucky just don't go together. That's what this is made for a fun opening topic because of. We're actually focusing on the positive today, and we've lamented bad luck or bad breaks or bad performances by Minnesota sports forever. But it's St. Patrick's Day tomorrow with the luck of the Irish. Where have the Vikings gotten lucky? Historically, I'm going to say the wide receiver position because you can name them over and over again, and it goes back a ways, and it goes to present day, and they've been very good in that position forever. Presently, it just happened. I'm a Kirk fan, but I saw the price tag that Atlanta paid.
Boy, did Atlanta take
Boy,
us
are
off.
we lucky that nobody took the bait in the Vikings organization to match or surpass that.
Yeah.
Because all the moves that we get to talk about for the rest of today can happen with that contract on your organization's tablet, if you will.
Correct. And that's hopefully Atlanta did a lot of stopping us to have a ton of angst, right?
Sure made the decision easy, didn't they?
So I agree with. I had 3 things historically that we were lucky about. 1, Chris Carter came to our organization at the right time because he was a mess.
Thank you for hating him, buddy Ryan.
When they brought in Cunningham and Favre in those big years, that they had gas in the tank. Like we've brought in backups with no gas and hope that they were able to do something, and they just didn't have it left. And the third thing is, and I got this. Here's the draft: Jamarcus Russell was 1. Calvin Johnson was number 2. He's a Hall of Famer. Joe Thomas was number 3. He's a Hall of Famer. But here's the guys that were drafted before Adrian Peterson.
Right.
Gaines Adams, Levi Brown, and Laurent Landier. I want to say thank you to those 3 for being just good enough that the Vikes got Adrian.
One of them had a decent career, and that was Laurent Landry.
Oh, Levi was okay for a while.
He was okay.
But these are just okay. But all 3 of them were just okay. And then we got Adrian.
I'm proud of us for being positive because in most cases, we'd be lucky to call Minnesota pro sports teams okay. But we focused on the good today. Speaking of good, one of the best, Dave Hoops is right around the corner. Stick around. We'll be right back. Not very often, if ever, we've bumped in with a Weird Al Yankovic song, but
maybe that's an idea.
Eat It is my song du jour today. Yes, that could absolutely be a theme in future
100%.
weeks. We could do all of Weird Al's greatest hits. I'll have more on why I chose Eat It in a little bit, but I'll tell you what, we got some good places to eat among our sponsors as well.
100%. Let's start with the Blackwoods Group on London Road, in Proctor, in Two Harbors, Blackwater, and Tavern on the Hill. You know, Brian, there was a question on Dana's neighborhood app about the best place to buy a steak in town. Blackwoods can't not be on that list, right? Like, if you're going to get a steak, head over to Blackwoods and do that. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Comfort Systems, Arola Architecture Studio, Hoops Brewing, OAR Holdings, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, and an Advantage Emblem Screen Printing. Hey, Brian, now earlier we had talked a little bit about the Easter program over
We were talking about eating. This is a great segue.
It is. Now tell the good folks about what Blackwoods is offering.
So again, Easter Sunday is the final day of March this year, but you got to get your orders into Blackwoods by this Friday the 22nd. They've got a family meal that serves 6 for $165. It includes the ham, the potatoes, the whole nine, the salad with roasted garlic vinaigrette, basically everything you could ask for, dinner rolls included. $165 pickup or delivery. You can get your orders in by phone. That's 218-625-6147. Or you can also do it via the email, which is easter@blackwoods.com.
What you ought to do is run over to the grocery store and see how much the food for Easter is going to cost you, and then decide if your time is worth the difference. Because my guess is the answer is no. Your time is more valuable than the difference.
So Blackwoods does a tremendous job. It's a great place to eat. And I'll tell you what, last night I had a great place to eat known as Ridgeview Country Club. Shout out to everybody there. Clint Johnson, longtime friend of mine, does a tremendous job of basically running the show there, along with Chef Dan and sous chef Cody. Everybody did a great job, and it was all part of the annual Hoops dinner. Dave, it was great to see you last night. What an evening, and good morning today.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, that was a tremendous dinner. They do such a bang-up job of, like, effortlessly putting that show on for us. It was great.
They did a great job. Speaking of effortlessly, I'm going to go the opposite because you put a lot of effort into using your vocal cords at the state tournament last weekend. Dave just gave me a nonverbal that you sound sleepy. That's not the case. You sound like a guy who lost his voice earlier this week.
Yeah, I completely lost it last weekend. I'm not sick, don't have any COVID or anything, full-on laryngitis, like nothing. This is a week later, and this is where I'm at. You heard me last night. I'm improving.
Yeah, you still sound plenty good, which is great because there's a lot to talk about because you and I chatted last night, and you said, well, what's on the docket for tomorrow? And I said, I'm going to give you the floor because I know there's a lot. Your last name is Hoops. You're a hockey guy, but you love the basketball. You've been eating that up in conference tournament season here.
Yeah, it's so fun. And, obviously we need to talk about the Vikings.
We will.
Something just great happened yesterday in my world. Tennessee was beaten, knocked them out of the number 1 seed. We have our 4 number 1 seeds already, but North Carolina is now getting moved out to the West, which takes them out of Connecticut's bracket, which is essentially a home game in Boston if they get to the finals. And, I'm following pretty closely. I already know who I'm picking. But we have 2 bubble teams today. Well, they're not even bubble teams. They're bracket breakers, 2 finals today that could get bids and take them from somebody else. NC State and
I was going to say, NC State could screw this whole thing up, couldn't they?
Yeah, it's really exciting. And the Oregon game's not till like 8 o'clock tonight. And if Oregon wins, they're going to snipe a slot, which they won't make it otherwise. It's really fun. And obviously, we're all going to be participating later next week with our pools. It's a great time of the year, of course.
It is. College sports really takes center stage. Of course, last weekend we were down at state hockey. The Big Ten women's basketball tournament was also taking place. We've talked about how the Iowa women's basketball team has been compared to following the Beatles, and they're quite impressive. Crowds are not as impressive at the Target Center for the Big Ten men's tournament, but that's going on too. College sports has got center stage written all over it. The UMD hockey team was on the TV last night. They did not fare very well. They're going to have to try to save their season here tonight. high school state tournaments, girls basketball winding down today, boys basketball coming up next. But again, we've got all these football moves. Man, you got a sports topic you want to talk about? This is the time, right, Dave Hoops?
Oh, yeah, it's incredible. I know we have the time of the year when all the major sports are playing, but, we even have, some good soccer this weekend.
Right.
It's just, and there's a great tennis tournament going on, which is like the fifth major, and we have the fifth major in golf going on this weekend.
And I think the PWHL team in Minnesota is home today as well. So whatever you want to watch, you can. But I know a lot of people, Dave and I talked about this to open the show, a lot of people are watching transaction after transaction involving their favorite NFL team. And our favorite has no shortage of moves taking place. Obviously, the big one is a quarterback change is going to need to happen if it hasn't already. I'm thrilled that Kirk's not here for that price. Not necessarily that Kirk's not here, but that price tag was absurd.
Yeah, I think, I always thought he was going to resign, and 2 years probably so, but you can't really blame the guy for taking the money. Yeah, he's been paid $400 million for one playoff win, but, it's about family, it's about his future, and Dave said it best. Atlanta made the decision for us. Great, good riddance. I've got no hard feelings, but let's go forward, and it's pretty exciting what may happen.
Yeah, that's the thing, Dave. Atlanta took that whole, he left for the money thing right out. Like, they offered him double what anybody else was going to offer him. I mean, they offered him 4 years.
When you consider the guaranteed money,
$80 million.
100 of that guaranteed.
Right. And the Vikes just, not that they didn't want to, there's no chance they could have, which thank you, Atlanta, because it takes the Kirk haters out of it.
Right.
And it takes the Kirk lovers out of it. It was just a business transaction.
Now, granted, they'll all come back when Minnesota plays Atlanta in Minneapolis this season. That'll be an interesting week whenever it is. Of course, we don't have schedule releases yet. But this is fun because if you would have told me that the Vikings were going to have Aaron Jones a month ago, I'd go, okay, how? All these moves that are questionable because nobody's played it down yet with this new group, they're questionable. I get it. We could be terrible, but I've told many people this. Knowing that what the Vikings had before was good or stable but not great was comforting but boring. This is interesting because they could be great, they could be awful, but it's kind of fun to get to find out. If Kirk was here, you don't have the financial flexibility to find anything out.
Yeah, it's completely true. I love the Jones pickup. I really like him anyway.
I do too.
Think that was wonderful. And for the Packers fans, tough, so. And then all this defensive moves we've made are tremendous and exciting. And there's still a lot of scenarios I playing around with the draft. But yeah, there's a lot of reason for Vikings fans to be totally stoked, I think.
Can I ask a question, gentlemen? Honestly, how many of the defensive people that they got do you know anything about before they got them, and how exciting is it? Really?
Two. I knew I must be a closet Texans fan because I knew enough about Cashman, partly because of his college career, and I knew enough about Grenard. And after that, I was a little bit lost.
See, I've heard people say, "Oh, this is fantastic," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you couldn't even spell any of their names except for Cashman."
I do want to give you a little light on the Van Ginkel situation.
You and I both laughed about that last weekend.
Dave brought him up to me in the hotel at the state tournament for hockey, and I said, I don't know who that is. That sounds like a medical condition. I can't come to work today because my Van Ginkel's acting up, and lo and behold, he's a Viking.
Yeah, no, so I think that I'm glad they did some defense stuff. I'm glad they got younger. I don't know if they're any good.
One thing I do want to say, because Dave, you said this takes the Kirk haters out of the equation. I'm not sure it does because I've heard a lot more from them since he's gone. They've basically tried to, soften it for those of us that liked Kirk, and they brought up every mediocre to bad statistic that he had. I don't think Kirk lovers or Kirk defenders need to be consoled because of the price tag, like you said. But the interesting part to me is this. There are people that still believe that Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, etc. were better quarterbacks than Kirk Cousins because the Vikings' record was better. But that's putting the win solely on the quarterback, which you shouldn't do. I know you're shaking your head no, and I agree with you. I'm telling you what I hear from other people, not sports nerds like us. So if the Vikings improve, you're going to hear that, Sam Darnold or rookie du jour was better than Kirk. No, you're just changing your identity. You're going to have to win in a completely different way.
Well, you got all this money to spend elsewhere. Like, honestly, that's the thing. Kirk is actually comparing Kirk to Burt Blyleven isn't terrible because Blyleven's a couple games over 500, but his peripheral numbers were pretty good. And that's what you got with Kirk. He didn't win any games, or not any. He's a 500 quarterback because he didn't bring them past that, right?
Right.
But he threw for 4,000 yards. His touchdown interception ratio was great. But when money was on the table, He went 4 yards instead of 10.
Well, and I'm going to close with this on Kirk because we can talk about something else, because otherwise we could spend the rest of the show on Kirk and for reasons that we all already know. The problem was with the money. The problem never should have been with Kirk. Kirk is a fine quarterback here, but they paid him to do what players like Mahomes, Rodgers, and Brady do. They paid that kind of money to cover up other holes on your roster. If you look at Kansas City, Mahomes, Kelsey, and the defensive end, Jones, are great. The rest of that roster is pretty mediocre, but Patrick Mahomes makes them wonderful. Newsflash to Packer fans, your roster, player for player, was never really that wonderful, but Aaron Rodgers made it look awfully good. You ask Kirk to do that, that's just not in his game.
Yep.
Your thoughts on that, Dave Hoops?
Oh, I completely agree. The thing is, though, getting a quarterback in this draft and paying this person far below what we have to pay everybody else. Well, we've got Darnold, who I like just fine, who might play himself into a decent role. He's only 26 years old. This is beautiful, and I'm not completely thrilled with the quarterback we're going to have to get, but there's some great scenarios that I'm playing around with the draft, which is going to be really fun, I think.
There are going to be a lot of questions to answer with the draft. Questions to answer. Dave Cook will have those for us. I think we've got time for a couple today.
Couple? All right. Well, let's combine. Well, I want to ask Dave about green beer to start with. So green beer is a thing tomorrow, Dave. How do you go about making green beer that doesn't change the flavor? Because I look at it and I'm like, okay, so what does it actually taste like?
Well, you don't. Let's just stop there. Okay, end of story. But for those that want to, and Budweiser does a beautiful job with Bud Light on it. It's just green food coloring. Right? It doesn't change the flavor whatsoever, or it's not harmful, depending on how you feel about food coloring. They make the river green in Chicago.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, that's how you do it, Dave. Pretty simple.
All right, so here's my question.
All right, so that was short. Maybe we have time for three.
I just wanted to ask that question because I don't drink beer, so I don't have an answer.
That's okay. I drank enough last night for both of us.
All right, so let's talk a little quarterbacks. I got two questions for you. So we've talked, Dave, you just led me into this fantastically. We've talked about rookie quarterbacks and kind of exciting and what you're going to do. What do you guys think the most important thing in a rookie quarterback is?
Well, I think, we always talk about, hockey IQ. We might as well go with football IQ. Now, I really like Bo Nix, and that kid has so much, and Denver's going to take him with the 12th, which is great because I love Denver and I'm happy. But you need to have, obviously, the physical skills. You need to have a quarterback-friendly coach like we have. But really, the understanding of the game, and you can use Mahomes as an example, as just the extreme confidence in your own ability to be able to elevate the teammates around you, gain respect like CJ did last year as just a kid, and then all of a sudden it's all going to come together. They all have big arms. It's in the head. That's what I think.
So I agree with the majority of that, but I think part of it is the game is revolutionized into a little bit different of a take now. I think football IQ is of supreme importance, no question about it. The ability to read a defense, the ability to adjust, all of these different things, the ability to speak the game with the coaches, what have you. But I think right now it's mobility. Because if you look at it, I'm not talking about Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson. I'm not talking about run-first quarterbacks. Lamar, Vick, you can pick whoever your runner du jour is. Kyler's more of a runner even. But I think you have to have some mobility. If you think back the last 2 decades, name 2 bona fide starters who couldn't run at all. The 2 answers for me would be Tom Brady and Kirk Cousins. And they're not on the same ilk. Peyton maybe would be a third. You're right. Now you've got to be able to at least extend a play or get yards yourself. So I don't know among these quarterbacks if any of them are a statue, but you can't be.
Yeah, you're talking about how Aaron Rodgers moved around, right?
Yes.
He can get a couple. So I think one of my concerns is the offense they come out of in college, because that spread, like Nick's, the spread offense where everything was a screen pass, that doesn't work in the NFL. Like he's going to have to be, his growth is going to be so much to become a competent or better or professional football. I think that's how the offense that they played in and their success in pro style concepts, I think matters. All right, so
last one of the day.
Piece of cake. I'm going to flip it to the other side. Darnold came in, right? What are the key things you need in a good bridge quarterback?
Well, talent would help. And, of course, again, this is a young guy who we were all fairly high on, and his situations haven't maybe been perfect. But, talent, number one. Number 2, a system that you can play in. Number 3, support, and hopefully a couple wins under his belt. And let's see what the Vikings do as far as a rookie quarterback. And then right off the bat, they're learning together in this system. So I guess you just need support, talent, and maybe a couple of little lucky breaks like you were talking earlier in the show.
I like that as well because I think my answers are just going to be how I feel, and I think a lot of the pundits probably aren't going to agree with me. But I think, for one, from a bridge quarterback, there needs to be an element of gratitude, especially if you're Sam Darnold, because you've already been Bust City and labeled that by a lot of people. You are getting an opportunity. You better be the ultimate coachable quarterback, because if not for that coach or that organization, you don't have said opportunity. But the other side of that is you need to be a good teacher. You need to be a good mentor, because part of that is just a willingness to do it. If you're a bridge quarterback who views the rookie as somebody who's coming after your job, it's not going to work. The reality is they are not only coming for your job, they're going to get it. You have to be willing to let them have it and, make it a good situation for them and hope you play well enough to catch on somewhere else.
Yeah, or have like Baker had, because Baker was Sam Darnold last year, and then he went out and had his best season.
And that would be the interesting piece, because whoever the Vikings draft, let's say Sam Darnold plays in front of him and plays well, he's on a 1-year deal. Do you re-up him and then trade your prize rookie to fill other holes? I don't think you do, but it's possible.
Yeah, depending on who they draft and when, I don't think.
That sounds like complete parallel universe type talk, but there are still people that, because he took us to an NFC Championship game, think Case Keenum should have still been here. Case Keenum hasn't had a real job as a starter since.
Right, hasn't even sniffed a job.
He's had, partial seasons where he's played really poorly. Yeah. There's a reason he's a journeyman.
Yeah, but I think Darnold is kind of like, we didn't like him in the draft because he was kind of a knuckleball thrower, right? But he could, at 26, really appreciate, as Dave was saying, really appreciate his opportunity and make something of it.
That was me. I was the gratitude guy.
Okay, well,
I don't know. I must sound like everybody else, because John Carlson usually thinks I'm you. Dave Hoops sometimes thinks I'm you. You now think I'm Dave Hoops. Apparently my voice is not unique at all. But whatever the case may be, I learned last night at Ridgeview that I appreciate a lot more than just your fruit beers, Dave Hoops. Talk about everything you got at the brewery here now.
Well, thanks. That was a lot of fun. So, as you know, we debuted at the Mill Room on Thursday, which is a really fun, 30-person kind of loungy, rentable space, but also open to the public. The other big thing, besides the fruit beer, we are expanding the fruit beer on that topic to add peach and pear and raspberry most of the time, which will make you really happy. We're also developing a shandy. We continue to make a little bit lower alcohol, a little approachable stuff while we have 25 beers on tap. So that's all going forward. And, of course, it's just, like I said earlier, it's sports mecca today. It's just every single TV has something really worth watching on, and it's going to be kind of a fun, big day today. We're going to have people down there pre-celebrating for the holiday, as you view it, and we'll be going from there. It's going to be great.
It is one of the best times of the year, without question. Dave Hoops, we're bumping you out probably the way I should have started. We're playing Welcome Back because, of course, you missed last week's show because you were a little busy at the state tournament. We're back at our normal slot. Everything feels back to normal with you. Thank you again, my friend.
Thanks. I really look forward to the rest of the show. Go Vikings. Talk it all up. I'll be listening.
We will do absolutely everything we can. We'll talk to you soon. Let's do it again next Saturday.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's our guy, Dave Hoops. When we come back, Rhett McDonald. There's a lot of football. There's a lot of baseball. But by the way, there's a ton of basketball. We'll talk about that next. Stick around. That's a good throw clear on the air. Dave Cook is back. I'm Brian Prudhomme. We're back on the Northland Sports page.
Sorry.
When you're a two-Coca show guy, you got to clear the throat once in a while.
Yep.
We could have played Let Me Clear My Throat. That's a good bump-in song.
Yeah, I thought I did that before we started. I'm
going to try to keep moving here. Bumping in with a little Peter Gabriel, Sledgehammer. Our next guest is more than a sizable Peter Gabriel fan, and that has to do with his fandom, not his size. But we'll welcome in Rhett McDonald. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Doing well. How are you? How's the travel? As you're headed to Mankato today, are you there already?
I am in St. Peter right now, but en route.
All right, so eyes on the road, but ears on us, right?
Correct.
All right, so let's hype up the Bulldogs, because this is, I won't say the undersold great team of the area, but more people need to take better notice.
Yeah, certainly a special weekend coming up, third time in a row in the regional. What's awesome about it is that, we're in Mankato. We have a lot of kids that came from the Twin Cities metro area to come up and play at UMD, so their parents and their fan base individually is not too far away. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a tough road, even in game one. But these guys are battle tested, and they should be ready to go.
Hey, Rhett, we talk about in college. We talk about those teams that are just always there, right? What does it take for a college basketball team to be that team that you are expected to be there? Like you said, three years in a run is great, but how do you make that team a 10 or 12-year run?
Man, I think at the college level, it certainly comes down to the type of guys that you bring in that meet your program standards. I think it's hard. I do. I think when you see programs like a Northwest Missouri that is a multiple national champion, they're in the region with UMD, and they're the number 2 seed, and Coach McCollum has won every single year. And Coach Wick is great as well, but he's in year 3. I think it's demanding. It's hard. I don't have a huge a perfect answer for you, but I do think it comes down to recruiting and the type of guys that you bring in and having them buy into the system that you run.
I would agree with that. And part of it, I think, too, is the legacy that guys before can leave, because the hope is, of course, that Justin Wick's recruiting trail is going to get easier, thanks in part to these guys that have been around a while. There aren't very many positives or silver linings to COVID, but the amount of time that these starters for Justin Wick have been able to spend in the program, that's been a plus. And I think leaving a legacy is going to help. Would you agree?
I'm happy you said that. I think that's huge. When you're a part of a program, and even at the high school level, to be blessed with great kids and guys that kind of just have the gift that keeps on giving, even though they're long gone, I think is crucial. So even guys that played before with Coach Wicks in his first couple of years here, I think they sort of laid the groundwork in terms of what our culture at UMD is really all about. And these guys came in and for us, obviously we know that COVID was awful, but with these guys that came in young and they were forced to play right away in the style and the manner that Coach Wick wanted to play in, I think only did this program wonders in preparation for this last 3-year run that we've been on. But again, they've put in a ton of work. We got lucky with a transfer with Drew Blair and that Coach Wick's 3rd year. Because he is one of the very best that I've ever seen come through UMD, and he's a special dude as well.
So I want to flip the script a little bit. I talked about guys on the team leaving a legacy for the future. The flip of the script, of course, is you are a former UMD player. The alumni will hopefully be out watching this in full force. How exciting is it? I've heard you use the word "we" several times, and "we, not me" is obviously a slogan that several basketball teams use, but I feel like the alumni feel pretty attached to this successful group.
For sure. And I credit Coach Wick to connect with the alumni since he's been here. He's done a wonderful job of making us feel connected to the program again. But going back to my playing days at UMD, and really only being on a team that had a chance to get into the regional one time, I do think that it's really, really cool. One of those things that you dream of as a player, and to know how hard it is to make it to a regional. Like, you have to be really, really, really good in order to make it into a regional. And these guys have done it now 3 years in a row. They're battling everything. Let's remember, they had to fight and claw and scratch back to get into this point this year. There was a time where they had lost four games, and I was kind of thinking that, man, I don't know if they're going to make it this year. And they did what they had to do and win about, I think, 12 games in a row to get back to this point. So it's going to be an exciting weekend, I hope. We all know that they're battle-tested, and I just hope that they're ready to go.
I think we're all hoping for a lot of success. We're talking to Duluth East boys basketball coach Rhett McDonald, but we can extend his resume, if you will, and put former Bulldog basketball guard Rhett McDonald. He's en route to the big NCAA clash in Mankato, 12 noon, the tip-off for the Bulldogs today. Bulldog men trying to have quite a run. They've had several. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'm wondering this, Coach. Is there a winning style of basketball? So we've seen teams that defense up but can't score. We've seen teams that can score like crazy and defense is a theory. I'm wondering if there is something in your opinion that if Where's the balance when you're in this spot and you're in the playoffs already? What kind of stylistic game gives you a better chance?
I think there's a two-part answer to that question. I think systems teams win most of the time when we get to this part of the year. However, when I do think we're at the point where if you have studs and you have transfers and you have guys that just kind of showed up from Division I programs, very much like Mankato has this year, they're a great squad. They had guys return. But I think most of the time systems teams win, but when you have guys that can play like the Mankato's and the Northwest Missouris, it makes that system type of winning tough. Now, on our first game today, when we play Fort Hays, we're going against a team. I would say both UMD and Fort Hays are both system-based, but you're going to see a contrasting style of play because Fort Hays plays the slowest pace in Division II NCAA. They average under 60 points a game, and keep in mind they've only lost 6 games this year.
Dale Race would be proud. Go ahead.
They guard it, and one of the things about Fort Hays, they play with unbelievable effort. Now, offensively, their leading scorer only averages 12 points a game. So you're going to see contrasting styles of play this year, and I think that I do like the fact that UMD can score it and they can shoot it, but I think efficiency is obviously going to come in and play a huge role today when you have a team that's going to walk it up the floor, be really efficient offensively, and they're going to guard you. I mean, we're going to have to score the ball, but we're going to also have to be smart with our possessions in the half court too.
That'll make for an interesting matchup. Of course, I joked that former Bulldog head coach and one of the more legendary ones, Dale Race, would be proud of a team having that much success, averaging under 60. You talk about the game revolutionizing or changing, and defense can be a theory sometimes. We've gone from games being 60 to 55 to 101 to 99 in some cases. But I want to close, Rhett, with a question that I hope is just fun for you, because we talked about, obviously, you're linked to the Greyhounds, you're linked to the Bulldogs. How much fun is this for you as a coach to see somebody like Maddie Thompson and Noah Paulson, guys you've coached at this level now, contributing?
I think that's one of the reasons why I'm down here to support those guys too. I think it's really, really cool to see these guys progress as athletes and as men to get to a point where they're competing really for a national championship. I think it would be poor on my part not to come down here when they're so close to represent our program and them and the Bulldogs as well. So it's really, really cool to see just their maturity and how they can play the game and be a part of a program that they absolutely love, regardless of the playing time they receive, which I think is sweet. I'm looking forward to it. I hope they have a heck of a weekend, and I hope we're in the Elite Eight next week.
That would certainly be elite, pun fully intended. I got to close with a high school basketball question. I'm going to squeak in one more. I want to talk a little bit about one of the local representatives at the boys state basketball tournament next week, and that's that team from Cherry, because we got them in the East Gym during that breakdown Saturday in January. The Awesome family. It almost feels like a pun because they are awesome to watch. What can you tell people that are going to be rooting for Cherry next week?
I think that going into the tournament, I think Cherry is the team to beat. Earlier on, Dawson Boyd, which I thought was the team that would really challenge them, they lost early in their section play. Isaac Asama is a heck of a player. Anytime people ask about him, I say he's special. So looking forward to seeing him in the state tournament. Looking forward to seeing him playing for the Gophers next year. I expect Cherry to win it.
I like that. I like that bold prediction. We're all going to love him at whether or not it's a renovated Williams Arena in the future or not. Seeing him as a Gopher will, again, be just awesome. Bumping you out with a little Peter Gabriel in your eyes. I hope that the Bulldogs look great to your eyes here at noon this afternoon. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you very much.
It's almost like I know your musical selections. I love you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, love you too. We'll see you.
All right, that's my guy, Rhett McDonald. There's nothing about basketball he won't discuss, much like CJ Osuchukwu last week.
Well, 100%, and I want everybody to hear the last sentence, and just the fact that two guys who appreciate each other can say I love you on the air is pretty cool.
I'm more than comfortable with that. Judge me accordingly. Very comfortable talking to Denard Span. He kicks off hour number 2 next. Stick around. We'll be right back.